Trademarks, brand recognition, and goodwill associated with its brands are often the most valuable assets that a company has. Licensing allows trademark owners to capitalize on their brand and increase market penetration by taking advantage of the licensee's infrastructure and resources. So you've seen this with celebrities. They often license their names to fashion lines and other products. And some examples are Lauren Conrad from The Hills. She's a television personality who licensed LC, Lauren Conrad, to Kohl's for clothing, shoes, and accessories. Another example is Lady Gaga. She's a singer who licensed her name to Coty Incorporated for perfumes.
So when we mention capitalizing on brand licensing, we're talking about monetizing. A brand can generate a significant amount of revenue with a minimal amount of expertise and resources. Apparel manufacturers often license their brand to fragrance manufacturers, and they don't have the core competency to manufacture the fragrance. But they can generate revenue, additional revenue, and brand recognition by doing so. Being from the Midwest, Maria and I are both familiar with Caterpillar and Harley-Davidson, which has now started to license their names for footwear and apparel, which are clearly not a core competency of either Harley-Davidson or Caterpillar. But in licensing those, their name rights, their brand, they generate additional revenue as a result of the brand. They expand their brand awareness to other consumers who now have maybe a warm and fuzzy feeling about these brands. And they associate the brand with a lifestyle that extends beyond the original product. So for Caterpillar, the lifestyle is a tougher person, a hard-working person. And for Harley-Davidson, it could be an adventure. And this is all part of a lifestyle strategy that goes into brand.
Yes. The danger of naked licensing. The owner of a mark has a duty to police the use of its mark. A trademark may be declared abandoned if an owner does not control the nature and quality of its goods or services. So that means that there's a possibility of a mark ceasing to become a source indicator or of a distinctive mark becoming generic. For example, escalator, that word was originally a brand of moving staircase, but through improper policing, it became a generic term. Another example is cellophane. This was originally a brand of transparent cellulose, but through improper policing, it has become a generic term that we use. A licensor has the same duty to maintain adequate quality control over the licensee's activities. If a licensor does not monitor and enforce the quality of the goods being offered by the licensee, the licensed mark may lose its significance as a mark and be deemed abandoned. Negotiating a license. The licensor retains ownership over the mark but enters into an agreement where the licensee is allowed to manufacture and distribute goods under the mark, subject to oversight and control by the licensor. Let's talk about some key considerations in negotiating a license agreement. Rights retained by the licensor. A licensor is responsible for policing its own mark, as we said earlier, and should carefully negotiate the specific rights it is granting to the licensee and which specific rights it is retaining. Schedule of licensed marks. Any agreement should include a schedule of the specific marks that are being licensed. Assignability. Unless otherwise specified, licenses are usually freely assignable by the licensee. Licensors can restrict who has rights to their brand by prohibiting or limiting assignment rights. Change of control. On the other end, licensees may want to negotiate a change of control provision whereby they have the right to terminate the agreement if the licensor's rights and assets are sold or transferred to another company. Indemnification. The licensor will likely want an indemnification provision whereby the licensee agrees to indemnify, hold harmless, and defend the licensor against any lawsuits. Right to sue. If a licensee has an exclusive license to manufacture and distribute goods under the mark, it may want to have the right to enforce the mark and bring suit against potential infringers. Licensors must consider that they would be giving up control of policing their marks to the licensee. Term and termination. Any license should include a provision for when the license will terminate and what happens to any unsold goods upon termination. Agreements may include auto-renewal provisions or may require affirmative action before a license can be renewed. And finally, another consideration, royalties. The licensor must negotiate how it is to be compensated for licensing its brand, oftentimes calculated by a certain amount of money for each unit sold. Agreements often contain minimum royalties, and this is to ensure that the licensor is paid a floor amount, even if the licensee fails to sell the expected amount of goods. And so you can see here that there are a lot of considerations and issues, so experienced counsel should be retained.
Absolutely. One of the issues that often arises is that licensors and licensees are not necessarily on the same page when it comes to the minimums that are incorporated into the license. Minimums often apply not only to sales but to marketing and can be a double-edged sword. A licensee may be obligated to spend significant sums to promote a licensed brand that it could lose at the end of the license, like leasing a car as opposed to owning it. So a significant amount of money adds to the fame or goodwill of the brand, and then once the license is up, the licensee no longer has control. A licensor, on the other hand, may be stuck with a licensee who is unmotivated or simply bad, and if the license fee is based on a percentage of sales, which, as Maria mentioned, most are, the short-term value of the mark is not being maximized, while the long-term value may be hurt in the market. The brand image of the licensed mark can suffer, and that ultimately may negatively affect even the next license because the value of the brand isn't what it was when the original license was entered into.